All right, so at the moment, from what the severe weather team and myself are seeing on the radar, the warnings are on track. Northland is the only region that has already started its red warning for heavy rain, but the other regions have yet to start. For Auckland and Northland, we're not seeing non-stop rain. As expected, it's lines of heavy falls coming in bands, so stop-start with the risk of extremely intense rainfalls. So that's for Northland, and the red warning for Auckland, which is Auckland north of Orewa. For Auckland north of Orewa, the red warning does not even start till 5 p.m. tonight, and expect that rainfall to continue through the overnight period. In the red warning area of Auckland, so north of Orewa, we do expect impacts in the overnight period. So slips, further flooding, and so people in that region, just listen to your helpful and friendly civil defence. For the rest of Auckland, south of Orewa, and including Great Barrier Island, we're on an orange warning. Now the rainfall forecast totals are not overly large, but this warning is in force for localised heavier falls overnight, kicking in from 8 p.m. in the north and later in the south, through until about 10 a.m. Wednesday. So if you live in Auckland, south of Orewa, we expect the impacts to be quite isolated, pockets of impacts where we see the heavier falls and higher intensity rainfalls overnight. So I guess the key thing for people south of Orewa is that not everyone will see impacts. If you live in the area that is in the red warning, you should expect to see some impacts overnight. Hot off the press, we have other areas on heavy rain red warnings. So listen up, and if you are in these areas, it's a serious weather event coming. I would like people in Coromandel Peninsula and Bay of Plenty west of about Kawerau, including the Rotorua Lakes District, the Western Bay of Plenty and Tauranga City, to go and have a look at what the weather warnings look like. They kick in for Wednesday, so it's a bit later on. But yeah, just get ready, have a look at the weather warnings and prepare. Coming back to Auckland, that's where most of us live, I'd like to also touch on wind. While we see the wind increase this afternoon and evening, if you live on the eastern coastline, particularly north of the Waitemata Harbour, then we expect that wind watch to kick in. The wind strengths are not particularly high for Auckland, but we do expect some tree throw over roads or power lines in the tonight overnight period because we're just so saturated. So, short version, on track, stay safe people and look out after each other. Thank you.
And so just following up from Georgina around that forecast and recognising that some of that weather is affecting not just Tamaki Makaurau, Auckland, but also our neighbouring regions, I'm going to pass now to Roger Ball, who, as I mentioned earlier, is our Director of Civil Defence and Emergency Management nationally, just to comment on some of the work that they're doing to support the various regions with their preparedness and direct response to some of the flooding that we're experiencing.
Thanks, Rachel. Tēnā koutou katoa, Roger Ball from the National Emergency Management Agency. We've heard the weather update from Met Service. I can give you just a little bit of a flavour of impacts as we're seeing them so far. So in Northland, a declaration of local emergency has been made by the Civil Defence Emergency Management Group, and the Regional Emergency Coordination Centre has been activated. NEMA has deployed 3 staff to assist at that coordination centre with the emergency now in place. In the Waikato, the Regional Emergency Coordination Centre and local emergency operations centres have been activated in response to the situation there. We understand that heavy rain is also expected in the Bay of Plenty, and I know that the Civil Defence Emergency Management Group is also monitoring things very closely. I won't comment further on the situation in Auckland because the Auckland Controller will speak to you about that, but I will just flag that the National Emergency Management Agency continues to provide significant resource and support to the operation here and will continue to do so. At a national level, the National Coordination Centre, sometimes referred to as the bunker, remains activated beneath the beehive and will remain so throughout the coming days to support the regions and to ensure that all of government response is coordinated. I just want to encourage the public, as many of my colleagues were also saying, to please follow the public safety messages and advice of your local civil defence emergency management groups. Follow them on social media, follow the advice on their web pages. If you want to engage with some more national level or generic preparedness advice, I can point you towards www.getready.co.nz. There are some excellent resources there in 12 languages, including Te Reo. So we encourage people to please stay alert and reach out to whānau, friends and family. It's about your personal preparedness, but it's also about our community resilience together. Thank you very much. Rachel.
Thanks, Roger. So just before I go into some more specific operational matters, updating you on where things are at with various utilities and services around Tamaki Makaurau, I'm just going to pass now to Police Superintendent Shannon Gray. And Shannon, of course, the New Zealand Police have been a key partner in the initial response to the flood events on Friday and have worked with us closely in our emergency coordination centre upstairs, just making sure that we've got a lined up response. But Shannon's going to talk to you a little bit about the work that they've been doing and some of the preparedness reassurance initiatives that are underway.
Thank you very much, Rachel. Kia ora koutou. Superintendent Shannon Gray is my name. I'm the Director of Deployment for Tamaki Makaurau. First and foremost, I think it's really important to acknowledge the loss of life, tragic loss of life that has occurred as a result of this event, and New Zealand Police acknowledge the friends and family of those that have passed. I also want to acknowledge our police staff who were involved in those incidents as well, along with the wider response that all emergency services and agencies have deployed to this incident. I think it's also really important to acknowledge the communities across Tamaki Makaurau and wider that have banded together to really support each other through this time of need and difficult time. Since Friday night, police staff have been extremely busy working alongside our emergency service partners to respond to this event. They've worked extremely hard. As well as dealing with this, we have maintained our standard response to our normal demand across Tamaki Makaurau. From a police perspective, we feel it's important to convey the message of safety to all those across Tamaki Makaurau and wider. We reinforce some of the messaging from Auckland Transport and Waka Kotahi around limiting travel on the roads. Travel if it's only necessary, and ensuring that you plan your journey before you leave and take your time to reach your destination. If you do come across heavy flooded areas as part of your travel, we suggest you don't try and forge through due to unknown dangers within that water, and best to turn around and return to location or find an alternative route. Over the coming days, as we have since Friday night, police have been deploying reassurance patrols into the communities most hard hit by this. We will continue to do that as we see ourselves through this next weather event. We will continue to do that obviously alongside other agencies, and touching on that, in recent days police acknowledge that we have had some burglaries in both residential and commercial premises. To that point, it's really disappointing to see the opportunist and I suppose selfish type offending that brings people to commit these types of offences, particularly in vulnerable locations. On Sunday night, we did apprehend two burglars in the act of committing a burglary in Wairau Valley at a commercial premise. We located a range of property that was in the vehicle a short distance from the premise that had been burgled. A 57-year-old male is appearing in court as a result of that, and a female has received a formal warning. Early this morning, 4 persons were apprehended following a burglary at a store in Point Chevalier. Police have recovered that stolen property. One 18-year-old male will be put before the court, and 3 others will be referred to our youth aid section. If anyone out there sees suspicious behaviour or concerns of behaviour, we encourage them to ring 111 emergency line immediately. Also, if someone has been the victim of a crime and they want to report that to police, we absolutely encourage that through our 10-5 crime reporting line. Thank you.
Thanks, Shannon. And just on that thread now of sort of moving around the region and what is safe to do and what is perhaps needing to be factored into your journey planning, I'm just going to hand over now to Sarah Bryant from Auckland Transport.
Thank you. Kia ora koutou. Auckland Transport has a few key messages that reiterate some of the messages we've heard already this afternoon. Aucklanders should make plans to travel home early to avoid this afternoon and this evening's heavy rain. Across the region there is potential for slips and floodwaters to disrupt travel and make some roads impassable. It's been great to see today that Tamaki Makaurau took the advice to stay home. We saw lower than usual traffic volumes across our network this morning, as well as significantly lower passenger numbers on our public transport services. With more people staying at home, that helps ease the pressure on our transport network, and it will help that later today. We also wanted to make sure that those Aucklanders who do need to travel are home safe before the worst of rain hits. So I just want to give a brief update on the status of the transport network as well. So since the weather event on Friday, Auckland Transport's had to close 82 roads. 35 of those are still closed. 47 have been reopened. For our traffic signals across the region, 32 went down on Friday night or Saturday morning, and 30 have been fully restored. We are still powering 2 of those by generator. From our parking perspective, parking occupancy is 25%, our normal occupancy on a normal day, and all our facilities are currently available. In terms of road network performance, traffic on the network today is moderate. The following issues are our key areas of focus. So Great North Road near State Highway 16 has 2 lanes open for westbound traffic and 1 eastbound lane open. Scenic Drive has 3 significant slips and managed access is in place for affected residents. Ahuroa Road remains closed because of a significant issue with the road there. Mill Flat Road, the Bailey Bridge will be on site today and residents will still continue to have access via the forest. Tahakakea Road has a significant slip and residents do have access out of the area currently. Glenvar Road is closed due to 2 slips. So those are the ones that I've just mentioned is where we're recommending that the broader public stay away from those roads if possible. From a public transport perspective, just a short update. The rail, we've got full network available with rail replacement at some locations. The demand's light and the network's flowing pretty well. Services are now running to a 40-minute schedule and we've got significant speed restrictions. Important to note is that there have been up to 20 slips reported on the rail network impacting our trains. Buses are running at approximately 90% service and demand today is much lower than a normal Tuesday. And from a ferry perspective, we're running on a reduced timetable, exceptions being Rakino, which has no service. Pine Harbour and Gulf Harbour are now operating with bus replacing ferries. Adverse weather is expected this afternoon and may have further impact on scheduled ferry sailings. Lastly, I just want to again urge Aucklanders to take extreme care if you must travel on the roads, and please, if you can, get home before the weather hits this afternoon. Thank you.
Thanks, Sarah. So just moving on to some other information about services and operations in relation to things happening across Tamaki Makaurau. So we will continue to have open throughout the night our 3 current civil defence centres, at Leonards Road School, 15 St Leonards Road, Kelston, the Massey University Albany campus, Sir Neil Walters Lecture Theatre, Massey University. That's accessed via the Albany Expressway on State Highway 17. Mana Tukutuku at 32 Riverton Drive, Randwick Park. Throughout the day, we've also had support and services available at Moana Nui Kiwa Pool and Leisure Centre in Mascot Ave, Mangere. And this centre will be available overnight for people that do need urgent accommodation as a result of any inclement weather. We will also be standing up, or are in the process of setting up at the moment, evacuation centres, again primarily for the purpose of people needing to seek shelter overnight at the Wellsford Community Centre and the Warkworth Town Hall, and we're currently looking at options for the QMU area as well. Information on those different sites will be of course available on our social media channels and our aem.org.nz website. If you do need to go to an evacuation centre or a civil defence centre, then please make sure you bring any essential items you're safely able to do with you. So things like medication, really important. If you need medications, that you bring those with you. And if you have special food requirements or things that are particularly important to you. On that theme of things that can be particularly important to people, animals and pets, we've had quite a few questions about what do you do with your animals and pets if you need to evacuate and can't stay with friends or whānau. If you're in that situation where you need to leave your home and you've got a dog or a cat or another type of domestic pet, and you really need to take that with you, then you can do that. You can take that with you to the Civil Defence Centre. But there's just a couple of things you really need to think about. Lots of different pets don't always mix well together, and not everybody loves pets the same way as each other. So if you need to bring a dog, then it must be on a leash, and ideally muzzled if you've got one. You might be asked to keep your dog in your car overnight, just depending on the situation at the site at the time. Cats and dogs, well, I probably don't need to sort of explain that they don't always get on well. So cats in a cage or a carry case, just to keep them contained and safe away from any other animals and from being injured or injuring someone else. If your animal has been injured as a result of the flood, of flooding or any other weather-related activities, ideally you would need to get that checked by a veterinarian before you head to a shelter. Our Auckland shelters, so the Auckland Council-run shelters, are also accepting dogs who need emergency accommodation, and they are offering free microchipping and registration. So if your dog is not microchipped or registered, and that's a barrier to you bringing it to the shelter because you need and you've needed to leave your home for emergency reasons, don't let that be the case. Bring your dog with you to the shelter and they can help you with that. Please call Auckland Emergency Management. I've said this number quite a few times, but I'll say it again, 0800 22 2200 if you're unsure of what to do or you need some help. Waste collection, just an update on waste. So we've been working very closely with our Auckland Council Waste Solutions team and have got good information on the process for getting rid of storm-related waste and local waste via transfer stations. And we're working with community groups to organise skip bins where there is a community initiative to clear waste in certain areas. I mentioned this morning that we already had, I think, 26 bins out to streets around Mangere, Sunnynook and other locations. And I'm sure there's been more delivered throughout the day. We're not publishing lists of streets because that will be fluid. As bins are filled, we'll be taking them away. And of course, as I mentioned, they're part of community-driven initiatives rather than being delivered to individual properties. We have got high winds coming, so please secure anything on or near your property that might become a hazard. So we don't want to be adding to the current situation by more things flying around and ending up in places that they shouldn't. And if you do need to remove items to keep your home safe, secure or healthy, it's a really good idea, just some advice to take before and after photos and leave structural items like jib and floorboards in place where they are. Floodwater can be contaminated, so using gloves, good hygiene afterwards is really important. Again, if you're not sure about waste support, again, there's good material available on our websites, and we can always help you via that phone number I mentioned earlier if you're just uncertain about what to do in that situation. In regards to water, Watercare says tap water remains safe to drink. So we have had some questions, about water and whether it's safe to drink. It is safe to drink. We've increased, Watercare has increased their sampling in the network, and the results are compliant with the required public drinking water standards. And they still have tankers in the west of Auckland providing emergency water, where we've had some issues with the supply line as a result of slips. There is repairs being done in that area, but there will still be some intermittent outages as they do some of that repair work. If there is people out there that are affected by that intermittent repair work and need water and can't physically get to one of those water tanker locations, again, you can contact us and we will find a way to help you with that. Just two more things for me to cover off. The first is just some information around financial assistance. So for welfare assistance, you can contact the Ministry of Social Development on 0800 400 100 about civil defence payments. So these are payments, as they sound like, related to helping out people affected by an emergency event. They can help with accommodation costs if you've been evacuated, loss of income because you can't work due to the flooding, emergency food, clothing and bedding if yours has been damaged or destroyed. You don't have to be a current beneficiary with Ministry of Social Development to access those services. Those services are there for people anyone needing help. The Auckland Mayoral Relief Fund provides one-off financial support to individuals, community groups and marae in Auckland who have been affected by the January 2023 Auckland flooding and landslips. And if you have urgent food needs as a result of being displaced by the flooding, you can look for providers at familyservices.gov.nz/directory. And again, the Auckland Emergency Management team is there to help, and that number again is 0800 22 22 00. Lastly, earlier in, well, it wasn't earlier in the week, we are early in the week. A couple of days ago, we did issue an emergency mobile alert in relation to some severe thunderstorm bands that were potentially coming through the region, recognising that they can move swiftly and they can bring with them very heavy downpours that were going to cause potential issues on top of our already sodden ground. Given the rainfall intensities expected are similar to those on Sunday, an emergency mobile alert will be issued to the entire Auckland region following this stand-up. The emergency alert will be issued to areas under both the red and the orange warnings, as the whole of the region is at risk of flooding due to the ground saturation. The issuing of this emergency management alert should speak to the seriousness with which we want people to take this incoming weather. And I just thought, I did see pop up a couple of times on social media in relation to the last alert, the fact that sometimes people don't receive those alerts. The way that they work is, obviously you have to have a phone within reception of a cell phone tower. There is a sort of a geographical boundary, I suppose, based on those cell phone towers in terms of getting those messages out. And the other thing was that some people's phones might not be of a model or of an age that can handle those types of messages. So these are intended to reach a wide audience, but they might not get to everybody. The other thing I heard is that when people open the message, they read it quickly, or they didn't quite have time to grab their glasses if the print was a bit small, and it disappeared. That's a settings thing on your phone. You might need to go into your message app, open the settings, and in the settings you can actually go back to any emergency alerts. So it shouldn't be lost, it should be there, it's just that you have to go back through that setting. So I myself had to do that just to sort of work out the process, but it's quite simple. So if you do have that flash up, disappear, go to the settings. In the settings you'll see the emergency alerts mentioned hopefully, and just go back and through that way. And that is the end of the information we have to share with you this afternoon. Thank you everybody for listening in, much appreciated. Stay dry, stay safe, and remember there's a raft of information out there if you need to access it, and people that are on the end of the phone available to help too. Kia ora koutou.